Hi, I'm Kylie, and here are 3 myths you learned in school that are colonial lies. Number 1, Africa had no history before colonization. This is completely false. Have you ever heard of ancient Egypt? I think a lot of people forget that Egypt is in Africa. Also, Great Zimbabwe had a thriving civilization. Colonial powers erased this history because they wanted them to seem like the real people who would bring change to the world. Number 2, indigenous peoples were primitive. In reality, indigenous societies had complex systems. I'm talking related to politics, astronomy, trade. I mean, they had their shit together. The label of primitive is propaganda that so many people are still buying into to justify land theft. And number 3, the British Empire brought civilization to the world. What they actually brought was resource extraction, cultural erasure, and genocide. Many colonized societies were already thriving before the British arrived. I get a lot of people in my comments like, the white man created everything. White men are the reason society functions the way it does today. European colonization and white supremacy created a lot of evil in this world. The good things you point to already existed before they came.
I mean, imagine, you go all around the world and smash up everything that other civilizations built, loot what they built, pillage, steal, even steal their ideas and their concepts and their philosophies. And then you sit on top of this mountain of stolen goods and declare yourself to be rich because of your own merit. And imagine telling this lie to your children.
Right. Now, let's talk about it. Black people did not have a history before colonization. Black people didn't have a history. Black people have actually gotten their history through the white people and all that black people are using the history from the white people. Black people, blah, 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 blah. Okay, it's fine. Black people did not have a history before colonization, so there is no history that the black people can actually brag about. They didn't have a history. Yeah, there is no any history making sense that can associate it to the black people. And that is what their claims are. But let's see, is it true or false? We are here to fact check because that is what we do best. We're here to do what? To fact check. Now, it has been the claims of the white people that we didn't have a history, that black Americans did not have a history before colonization and all that. And therefore, they should not brag and they shouldn't talk about any history. They cannot associate themselves and they can't be associated with any history because they didn't have a history. Now, did black people have a history? Did they had any history? Yes, absolutely. Black people had a long, not only a history, but they had a long, rich, and advanced history long before colonization. It wasn't just a history, but it was number 1, long, rich, and advanced history before colonization. That is one thing you need to know. They claim that Africans had no history. They claim that, because I'm talking about the African Americans who were taken from Africa during colonization. They claim that Africans had no history or black people had no history before Europeans arrived is a colonial myth. You know, it's a colonial myth, a false narrative used to justify slavery, number 1. Number 2, exploitation. Number 3, racism. In truth, Africa was home of some of the oldest and most sophisticated civilization. You wanted us to address it? You wanted us to bring it on? We are bringing it on. Not just bringing it on, fact-checking. In human history, Africa was home of some of the oldest and most sophisticated civilization in human history, with great empires, trade networks, universities, and cultures that shaped the world. And cultures that did what? Shaped the world. So when you look at the whole entire world, the cultures that are uprooted and extracted from Africa is what shaped the world, is what made the world look the way it's looking like today. So telling us that black people did not have history is a piece of a lie. Yeah? That's a very big lie. We cannot even try to talk about it. You don't even want us to start talking about it because that is a big lie. And we are still on it. We want to break it down. What was the history of the black people? What was the real history of the black people? Because you're claiming black people did not have a history. But we have an evidence on paper. We're going to just share it right here, right now. But before we get to that point, I want to take a look at these videos. As you're watching these videos, prepare your thoughts, have them shared with the comment section. I will do my best to make sure I read all of them and give a response where possible. If you're watching me for the first time, kindly consider subscribing and let us be able to grow together. For my returning subscribers, you guys are very great people. I really love and appreciate you coming every other time. Now, let's take a look at the videos. Then after that, we are going to break it down. We are going to speak every single history of a black person because they want us to talk about it. We're going to talk about it. Let's take a look at the video.
I mean, imagine you go all around the world and smash up everything that other civilizations built, loot what they built, pillage, steal, even steal their ideas and their concepts and their philosophies. And then you sit on top of this mountain of stolen goods and declare yourself to be rich because of your own merit. And imagine telling this lie to your children, to your own children, to your grandchildren, generation after generation. How do you think that's going to go? You didn't invest in creating actual merit. You cheated, you lied, you stole, you brutalized. And then you tell your own people that everyone else in the world has nothing and you have everything because of how much better you are than everyone else. How long is that lie sustainable? I mean, these are people who actually have civilizations, who actually created and built and accomplished and didn't just pillage and plunder. And there's still those people today, even though you have oppressed them, they're still those same people. And you're still the way you are. I mean, a good example actually is African Americans. I don't know if you can think of a people who were more held back, more deprived, more sabotaged than African Americans. You took everything away from them and took them away from everything. They started in your country at less than zero, literally regarded and treated as subhuman, not allowed to learn to read or write or anything for hundreds of years. But you see, they come from a people of accomplishment to one degree or another, not a people of piracy and theft and appropriation. They come from a people who created and built and developed in their own countries, in their own land. History.
I can't say that I spend a lot of time hanging around racist white people, but I will say this. They will always find a way to make themselves out to be the victim. I had this one coworker in the past. Let's just say her name was Barbara. Okay, Barbara's this middle-aged white woman who has some racist views. One day, we've got a new girl. She's serving a table. It's full of like 8 bitchy Karens who are doing way too much. Basically, they just want to get their food for free. So they're sending everything back after they've already eaten half of it and saying like, oh, this was terrible. I didn't like this. I didn't like that, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, I felt so bad for the new girl because she's like on the verge of tears. Like she is so flustered. These Karens are being so rude, so mean for no reason. Well, they would just want to get their food for free. I said something like, man, I hope that new girl doesn't think this is what all of our customers are like because they are not like that. Usually they're really nice. And this is like a one-off situation. And this is like her 3rd day at work and she's having to deal with this. I feel so bad. Barbara looks at me and goes, well, you know why that is. And I'm over here like, no. What? And she goes, it's because they're black. Immediately I shut it down and I'm like, this has absolutely nothing to do with race. That is wildly inappropriate to say. Like, I can't even tell you how many white tables I've had that have acted exactly like that and worse. I said, maybe it's because they're bitchy Karens who want their food for free, but it has absolutely nothing to do with the fact that they're black. So I felt like I set the record straight. I felt like we had an understanding, right? Anyway, Barbara goes home earlier than the rest of us. She took that opportunity to go and run and tell HR that I was discriminating against her as a Wisconsinite. Now, let me tell you what really happened. Barbara thought I was going to go to HR and tell on her for being racist. So she thought, let me go to HR first and report Axel first. Because then, whenever Axel reports me for being racist, it's going to seem like he's just making it up. And he's just mad that I reported him. So now he's making up a bunch of bullshit. And it's just retaliation. Very sneaky, very sneaky. Oh, the racist whites will always do that, won't they? They will always try to turn themselves into the victim. I ended up getting suspended for a week without pay, okay? And I lived paycheck to paycheck at the time. So that they could do an investigation into me and interview a bunch of coworkers and see if I was discriminatory against Wisconsinites. The most fucking ridiculous thing I've ever heard. All because Miss Barbara couldn't take accountability when she was caught in the act being racist. Don't worry, I ended up getting her back. She ended up quitting because she was like super embarrassed by the end of all of this. So anyway, we got her back. I'm not going to go into all of that, but we got her back and she learned her lesson, okay? I ended up really like laying into her. But anyway, just to my point, I was thinking about that today, and I was like, man, the lengths that these racist white people will go to rationalize and excuse their racism, to justify their racism, and to avoid taking accountability whenever they get caught in the act.
Man, I tell you what, nothing makes racist white people more pissed off than me, a white person, trying to educate about racism and trying to educate about what white privilege is and all these things. And it's so funny because these same people will argue with me till they are blue in the face about how they're not racist and we don't live in a racist institution and black and brown people have it so easy and racism doesn't exist anymore. But then they will turn around and say the most racist, ignorant, vile shit you've ever heard in your life. The disconnect is amazing. And this is why I make content like this, because it's so important. Because we do live in a racist institution, and we are all raised in racism as white people. This is simply a fact. And the crazy part about it is every one of us knows this. Even the ones who will sit there and fight with me to the death about it and act like it doesn't exist. Y'all know white people are racist. Y'all know about the casual racism, the casual microaggressions that we are raised in, no matter where we live in this United States of America. And this is why I will never stop. I will never stop trying to educate as a white person about racism and how we need to learn. We need to evolve. We need to do better. It's almost as if they feel like admitting to a racist institution or admitting to racism makes them this evil, terrible person. And so they would rather double down than to grow and be a good person. And that's so bad, because all that says to me is that you have a small mind and a cowardly soul. And I wish better for you than that, truly, because everything in your life will get better when you stop being so ignorant.
Black Americans were cannibalized by white Americans, believing them to be a delicacy. Have you ever heard of the story of Nat Turner? Nat Turner led the most successful slave revolt in American history. Unfortunately, he was captured and hung in Cortland, Virginia, but not before being tortured. After his murder, he was cut into pieces and his body parts were used for a variety of things. Parts of him were eaten, parts of him were made into belts, purses, grease, oils, and his bones were made into trophies and heirlooms. If you would like to learn more about the cannibalism of Black Americans by white Americans, this book is the one to read. And learn up.
Racism is about jealousy. If you think that's a reductive statement, please stick with me. When I say jealousy, I'm talking about insecurity, which is really what jealousy is, but I think it's easier to understand if I say insecurity rather than just jealousy. Because we know from appropriation that we are very jealous of other cultures. Why would we want to listen to the music, eat the food, wear the clothes, do the hairstyles, have everything, the language, but not give credit where credit is due and not uplift the people who created it? White people are so lost in feeling like they don't have a connection to culture, especially many of us who are very far removed from our European roots. And I think the need to fill that space and that insecurity of this lack of culture and lack of something to call our own is often filled with cultural appropriation and the idea that being white is superior. I was first introduced to this concept of racism being jealousy in college, and I can't trace it back to one particular scholar, but I would like to give credit where credit is due to that Black scholar. If you can find anything tracing it to one particular person, please leave that in the comments. I think it's important to think about racism in this way if we want to unlearn it. Because, as some people say who are non-monogamous, or anyone who's just working on their relationships, jealousy is an indicator that something is not quite right with us. It's an indicator of our insecurity and how we might be feeling. It's not about what our partner is doing or what someone on Instagram is doing with their life that makes us feel inadequate. It's about something going on inside. And I think we really need to interrogate that. What is it about people of color showing excellence, people of color maybe being more in touch with culture, people of color being more in touch with the environment, people of color making better food, and everything else that we envy? What does that trigger in us? And why do we have the need to put those people down? It's about jealousy. And if we can figure out that we're feeling that way and trace that feeling back to maybe some of our unconscious biases, I think it's a lot easier to start thinking about how can we unlearn that? How can I feel secure in my identity as a white person who has roots in maybe Italian and like other cultures, but like doesn't really feel connected to anything? How can I feel secure in myself to not want to put others down, whether that be racism or any other form of discrimination, or just plain hating on another woman because she's amazing? You know, I think this makes it seem like racism is very simple, but it also just helps us frame it in a way that's accessible to us. We know that dismantling racism starts with individual work, and personal growth is all about thinking about the hard things about yourself and the things and parts of yourself that you don't like. And jealousy is one of those things. No one wants to be jealous. It's an awful, awful feeling. And we don't want to admit that we're jealous. And we shy away from that, but it's something we can interrogate, and I think that is going to help us go a long way. Anyway, just my thoughts. Happy Juneteenth. I hopefully will speak about this more coherently in the future. Yeah.
Now, before the coming of the colonizers, the coming of the Europeans in Africa, we had ancient civilization. And ancient civilization happened before 500 BCE, you know? And we had the ancient Egypt, which was Kemet, located in Northeast Africa. Okay, so one of the earliest and greatest civilization in the world history was there. Africans built pyramids. That is number one. Advanced mathematics, medicine, writing. That was hieroglyphs. And we had centralized government thousands of years before Greece and Rome. So Africa had centralized government thousands of years ago, before even the Greece and Rome. Okay. Number two, we had what we call Nubia. Nubia stroke Kush. Yeah, the Nubia or the Kush. And this one was in Sudan, south of Egypt, ruled parts of Egypt for a time as the 25th dynasty. It was the 25th dynasty. The black pharaohs, known for their pyramids, iron production, and warrior culture. So in Africa, we had a history also of the iron production, a history of pyramids. We had a history of warrior culture, and that is just under ancient civilization. We also have Carthage in North Africa, a powerful African empire. It was called the Carthage, a powerful African empire in modern Tunisia that rivaled Rome until its fall in the years of 1946 BC, and led by great generals like Hannibal Barca. Yeah, like Hannibal Barca. We had to go deep and look for these, do a lot of research as possible, just to show out that we had a history. Those who are claiming you didn't have a history, you need to go back and do research. You need to go back in books and read. Yeah, you need to dig deeper, not just speaking. Fact check and bring facts on the table before we start talking about the black history. Number two, we had medieval African empire. This was 500 CE to 1500 CE. Yeah, during Europe's dark ages, Africa had thriving kingdoms known for wealth, learning, and diplomacy. We had kingdoms that were known for, number one, wealth. So Africa, when we say Africa is rich, it is before, way back, and learning. We had knowledge. Those who are calling Africans uncivilized or illiterate, there was kingdoms that were known for wealth and learning, knowledge, yeah, and diplomacy. So we were not taught things. Let not white person come and tells you, we taught you how to do this, we taught you how to do this. No, they copied from us. They copied from the black people, So this one was an empire like the Ghana Empire in West Africa. We had Mali Empire, that was 1235 and 1600 CE. We had the Songhai Empire. Songhai Empire. We had the Songhai Empire. We had the Benin Kingdom. We had the Great Zimbabwe, that was in South Africa, Benin Kingdom in Nigeria. We had Ethiopian Empire in Abyssinia, and many others. Now, let's break it down. Let's talk about the Ghana Empire in West Africa. The Ghana Empire in West Africa, this was the first major West African empire, 300 to 1200 CE, rich from gold and trade across Sahara. The Ghana Empire was the first one in West African, and it was rich was rich from gold and trade across Sahara. So in this Ghana Empire, there was a lot of gold, and that is what defined it. It was very rich in gold, was known for gold, okay, and trade across the Sahara. So these are black history, We had a history. They used to do trade across Sahara, and that is what built and made the Ghana Empire. Number two, we have the Mali Empire. This one was in 1235 and 1600 CE. One of the richest empires in history. One of the richest empires in history. It ruled, its ruler Mansa Musa in early 1300s is often regarded as the wealthiest person ever. Wealthiest person ever. Not even a person or a single person today globally can be compared to this man, Mansa Musa, the wealthiest person ever. Mali built Timbuktu, a global center of learning with large libraries and universities. Mali built Timbuktu. Timbuktu was a global center of learning with large libraries and universities. Nobody should tell you that black people were uncivilized. Black people were illiterate. Black people were not uncivilized. They were not illiterate, And we are talking about things that used to happen or things that happened before colonization, before colonization. So somebody who tells you that before colonization, Africa was nowhere, Africa was nothing, it was nowhere to be seen, and all those kind of things, that person is just somebody who doesn't know what he's talking about. He doesn't have sense. He doesn't know the history. He has not gone back to the history and do a lot of research, because only those people who have done research, they've read books, they've studied enough, they know that Africa had a history before colonization. You don't come out and say Africa didn't have a history. We might have even been the people who taught or started the things to do with education and all that. It is only that the way we used to do education and the way they used to do education is different. It wasn't the same, because we didn't learn and we didn't study things the same as what they came to do and came to tell us. You see, the problem is that what they found us doing, they brushed it off. What they found us doing, what was happening in Africa, they tend to brush it off. In that, they made us believe that what we were actually doing, after now they've distracted everything and all that, making us to believe what we were doing was not making any sense. It wasn't important. What we were doing was not really what we were supposed to be doing. They made us believe we were doing it in the wrong way. You get? And I believe maybe that is the reason as to why maybe people who were not there at that time, people who didn't know what was happening at that time, would come and say that black people did not have a history before the coming of the Europeans, which is not even true at all. Black people had history, and that is what we are addressing and talking about right now. Okay? Now, we've talked about now the Mali Empire, which existed in 1235 and 1600 CE, one of the richest empires in history. Its ruler was Mansa Musa in early 1300s, and he is often regarded as the wealthiest person ever, And Mali built Timbuktu. Timbuktu was a global center of learning with large libraries and universities, So the things to do with the literature and all that started a long time ago. Education was part of the black history. Nobody should lie to you. We have the Songhai Empire. The Songhai Empire existed in the years of 1464 to 1591. So in the years of 1464 to 1591, we had the Songhai Empire, larger than Western Europe, and at its peak, it was very big, it was huge, it was large than the Western Europe at its peak, with a strong military and a well-organized bureaucracy. Black people black people, mysterious people. We were great already. Nobody created greatness, my friend, for us. Nobody made us great. The greatness in the black community and in black lands started a long time ago. Nobody should brag that we made blacks look the way they're looking today. Nobody made blacks look the way they're looking today. Blacks were already huge. They were already unbelievable people. It is only that people came and tried to disqualify what we were doing and tried to destroy what we were doing, and they tried now to paint us with what they wanted us to do, which wasn't actually what we were supposed to be doing. But because they left when they had destroyed everything, we had no otherwise than to keep on doing that we were doing, what they were doing or what they asked us to do. That is what it is. And so, the Songhai Empire had a strong military and a well-organized bureaucracy. Yeah? There was even a well-organization in Africa. We had Benin Empire, the Benin Kingdom. The Benin Kingdom existed in Nigeria. known for its advanced art, bronze sculptures, and urban planning. Yeah, that was the kingdom in Nigeria. It was the Benin Kingdom. Known for its advanced art, there was a very huge art, and art has always been a black culture. You know that nobody else can supersede black people when it comes to art, bronze sculptures, and urban planning. That is what it is, okay? We also have Great Zimbabwe. The Great Zimbabwe in South Africa built massive stone cities. The stone cities. Do we have stone cities today? We don't have it. But in the Benin Kingdom, the Great Zimbabwe in South Africa will build massive stone cities. The massive stone cities, the ruins still stand even today. The cities that it has never gone down. How many years are we talking about? We are talking about like many years ago. But the cities, the ruins still stand even as we're talking today. Up to date, they still stand. Yeah? And controlled trade routes with Asia and the Middle East. Africans, black people, they controlled trade routes with Asia and the Middle East. The so-called a group of people, the minority group in America, and the people who are poor and helpless in Africa, that you are saying they didn't have a history. Now we are fact-checking. Tell us what you know. Let us tell you what we know, because we have done a lot of research and we are bringing you the real thing. Black people had a history, and that is what we are talking about right now. Ethiopian Empire, the so-called Abyssinia, one of the world's oldest continuous civilization, with written records going back thousands of years, and one of the first nations to adopt Christianity in the 14th century. Okay? One of the first nations to adopt Christianity in the 14th century, the Ethiopian Empire. One of the world's oldest continuous civilization. You see, calling the black people uncivilized, calling Africans uncivilized, that is what the West call Africans. That's what the West refers to the black people, uncivilized. But remember, we had an Ethiopian empire, the Abyssinia, one of the world's oldest continuous civilizations. And I'm beginning to think many of the things that the white people are doing today, the supremacists or these white countries, they copied from the black people. And they're borrowing from the black history day in, day out. They do not have their own history. They don't have the history they can actually depend on, they can touch on. It is the black history they're depending on. Okay? And this is just one of the things they've been talking about. We are uncivilized. Uncivilized? When civilization began in Africa, when civilization began with the black people, that is insane, isn't it? Yes, it is. Okay? So, one of the world's oldest continuous civilization was an Ethiopian empire with written records going back thousands of years, and one of the first nations to adopt Christianity. That is what it is in the 14th century. Number 3, we have trade culture and global influence. Trading culture and global influence was also a culture, a history of the black people. It's also a history of the black people. Trade culture and a global influence is also a history of the black people. So for those who don't know, or they are talking about black people not having history before colonization, you need to sit back and take a listen to this. Africans traded gold, ivory, salt, textiles, and iron with Arabs, Asians, and Europeans long before colonization. Ivory, gold, salt, textiles, and iron with Arabs, Asians, and Europeans long before colonization. Are you getting that? Long before colonization, they were already doing trading. They were already doing trading of gold. They were already doing trade of ivory. They were already doing trading of salt, trading of textiles, trading of iron, This was long before colonization with Arabs, with Asians, and with Europeans. And I'm beginning to think this is the reason as to why Europe invaded Africa. Because Europe didn't have these things. They didn't have the gold. They didn't have the ivory. They didn't have the salt. They didn't have the iron. They didn't have the textiles. And they were looking at these things coming from Africa and they felt like, oh, so that is where it's coming from. Let's invade. Let's colonize them. Let's take it by force. We don't want to do trading. We want to take it. Because, trading is a matter of you give something, I give back to you. And just maybe because or after or before the black people had prepared themselves that much, they had already been invaded. And that is how colonization maybe happened. I think this was one of the things that catalyzed colonization, or maybe that attracted the Europeans to colonize Africa. Yeah. African universities like Timbuktu's Sankore University attracted scholars from around the world. And they were really feeling like, or they wanted to come back. Like right now, when we have gotten to a point where now the black people or Africans, they want to go to Europe and all those places for further education and all that. Africa was a land of education. And now the Europeans, those people from there, they were the ones who were attracted with Africa's schools and all that, because it attracted people all over the world. They wanted to come and learn in Africa. They wanted to come and study in Africa, So Africa was great. Africa was just destroyed because of its greatness, And before you even think about going out there, before you even think about moving around or going or traveling to the world or go wherever you want to go in for further education and all that, you need to understand Africa was already leading. Africa is the first. They're the pioneer of education. They're the pioneer of good schools. They're the pioneer of civilization. They're the pioneer of education and literacy. You need to know that. That is one thing that should cross your mind before you think about going out there in search of education and green pastures and all that. Africa was the pioneer. We were the pioneer of trading. Everything comes from Africa. They wanted to associate themselves with Africa for them to get what they're getting. And remember, every wealth that is there right now was built and it was taken and extracted from Africa. It is one thing we should know. African art, music, spiritual systems influenced cultures across the globe. It is to my surprise, and I won't be surprised when someone tells me, white people coming to Africa saying they came to spread, because colonization started with the so-called spreading gospel, because the missionaries came to Africa in the name of their coming to spread the gospel in Africa, and thereafter colonization happened. So it will not surprise me to realize or to find out that even the things to do with spiritual matters and all that, white people copied from the black people. White people copied from the black people because black people might have started it a long time ago. Then they copied from it. They just changed some things and they brought it in a different way to try and make us believe in different things or capture our minds or brainwash us or make us believe in them before they do colonization. Because African art, that is a black history. Music is a black history. We have spiritual system, is a black history which influenced cultures across the globe. Spiritual history, spiritual systems that influenced the culture across the globe. Tell me why we should not believe when somebody tells you or somebody tells us that the so-called the spiritual things started in Africa or with black people. That is it. Number 4, colonization and eraser, So when the Europeans colonizers arrived from the 1400s onwards, they rewrote history. That is what I was talking about. They rewrote history. They changed the history. Destroying libraries, number 1, burning records, number 2, and spreading propaganda to make Africans seem primitive. Now, I've talked to you and I've told you everything and all the history of the black people. If you've been keen, you've realized Africa and black people were very, 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 very strong. And they were rich in a very deep history, in a very sensitive history. The history that today you might not be able to locate it, you might not be able to come across it. And that is why some other people would boldly and gladly say black people did not have a history. It is because they don't really know, because they don't have a research. They haven't done a research. Maybe they can't get it. Maybe they can't get hold of it. They can't reach it and all that. Because after colonization now, the Europeans knew everything. Those people who colonized Africa, they know very well everything that was in Africa. And Africans were able to let it out to them and to bring it to them, because Africans and the black people were these people who wanted to do good to people, having good relationships with other people, associating in a good way. There was no hatred, there was no jealous, there was no, there was love, there was kindness, there was caring and all that. So they used to associate with other people in a good way and all that, because that is what actually they were taught. That is those are the values that were being taught to the black people. Are you getting my point? And now, because of that goodness, I tell you sometimes, and I've been talking about this all the times, too much of everything is poisonous. Blacks were too good people. To an extent, the Europeans, they were reading every move and studying them that way every time, and it was easy for them to colonize the black people, So when colonization happened from 1400s onwards, the Europeans rewrote the history. So when they wrote the history, they destroyed libraries that kept history, kept records, that kept that real history that was written and all that. They banned the records so that no prints will be followed or it will be traced and all that. And they started spreading propaganda to make Africans seem primitive. So right now, when a black person talks about a black history before colonization, you're looking at them and you're feeling like these people are primitive, right? Isn't that what you're saying? Yeah, that is what you're saying. Looking at them, looking like these people are very much primitive, or these people are not making any sense. Yeah? So this helped to justify slavery and colonization. But archaeological, linguistic, and historical evidence shows that Africa had complex societies, governance, and knowledge systems long before colonization. Nobody should come to you and tell you that black people did not have a history before colonization. Black people are the pioneers. Black people are the real, foundational people of the world. They are the original people of the world. After me trying to put this out to you and explaining this to you, you'll realize that black people have brought and have made almost many things into action, into existence. What happened is just the advancement of things and all that. But where did it start from? Who was the center of it? It was a black person. It was an African. That is where they borrowed it from, everything. Tell a European person to explain a history of a white people to us, like the ones we've just explained. Tell them where did their history of education came from? Where did their history of trading came from? Where did the history of spiritual matters and all that came from? If they're able to break it down for you, if they're able to fact check and bring evidence, then you will believe that they had a history. So when somebody tells you the history of a white person is built from the history of a black person, that is what they mean. It is very true. There is no lies there. So yes, black people had and still have a deep, diverse, and powerful history before colonization. Not just a history, but deep, diverse, and powerful history before colonization. Africa is the birthplace of humanity. Africa is the birthplace of humanity and the foundation of civilization. Somebody walking around and telling you blacks are uncivilized, that person is a very big lie. He doesn't know the history. He hasn't been able to read and understand and learn the history. The founders of civilization are the black people. The birthplace of humanity is Africa. So respect African Americans. Respect black people all over the world. Because Africa is the birthplace of humanity. Colonization didn't give Africa any history. Colonization did not give Africa any history. It actually interrupted the history of the black people and the history of Africa. You got anything to say? You can table it. But that is what it is. Tell me what you think in the comment section. It was very interesting breaking it down. I love it. People should know who black people are and what power black people got. Tell me what you think in the comment section. I'll do my best to make sure I read all the comments and give a response where possible. This is African Streamline. I am Atamba Heti, and thanks for coming. Thanks for always choosing the channel. I'm very much glad and I'm very much happy. Keep on subscribing, keep on watching, press notification bell. If the video is nice, share it to somebody else. Let us educate each other. Let us know who we really are, because it's only by knowing who we are that we can be able to stop people from taking advantage of us. Thank you for coming. Thank you for watching. Until next episode, peace be with you.